Man, I'm just having too much fun today. All right, you guys, why don't you take your seats? Let's get rolling again. And we have another very special presenter coming up here. So now it is time for our special book launch event of Charles Castle's new book, Chasing Down the Storm. Charles R. Castle, Jr. What can I say about Charles? Well, actually, I could say a lot. There's so much to say about Charles, my friend and co-host, but I'll try and be brief so we can get to his book launch reading. Charles and I have collaborated on this reading and other things poetry related for quite some time now. Here we are celebrating the beginning of our 4th season of Burning Down the Barnes, and we are fortunate to also be celebrating Charles's new book today as well. So, I first met Charles at Cush Cafe, where we both would often read our poetry at the Page 2 Poetry Open Mic each week. Charles, myself, and other poets from that reading have done a lot of work over the years to support and inspire young poets and upcoming poets who otherwise would find it hard to break into the poetry community here in Eugene. Charles also helps me to coordinate the 3 Poetry Corner events I produce annually, which give local published authors an opportunity to sell their books to a local audience. I have watched Charles grow as a writer, and I appreciate his work on behalf of others, including the homeless population here in Eugene. It is with extreme pleasure and appreciation that we get to have him present his book launch here today. Of course, Charles also provided me with a small bio for today. Charles R. Castle Jr. was born in Portland, Maine in 1951. He grew up in rural Connecticut and went to college in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. Eugene, Oregon has been his home for 40 years. As a young writer, Charles was published in Hanging Loose. He began writing poetry again after the death of his parents in 2014. He has 4 books: Living with Patriarchs, A Season's Second Coming, A Good Night in America, and Chasing Down the Storm. His poems are included in several anthologies. I would also add that Charles's poetry is featured in the Oak and 10th Street parking structure as part of the City of Eugene's Step Into Poetry installation. He has also just finished a term as board member of the Oregon Poetry Association. He says he believes in spoken word poetry, and he's never met an open mic he didn't like. Please welcome my friend and co-host, Charles R. Castle Jr.
Yeah, having a poem in a stairwell in a parking lot doesn't get any better than that. Although this is pretty good too. Chasing Down the Storm, 2 years worth of work, 400 poems culled down to a couple, and a lot of support and assistance by several people in this room and by a larger community, and the opportunity at places like this to try out the stuff you're writing and to try to refine it and to learn. So thanks to the Eugene Poetry community for opportunities to work on that. And yes, proceeds from this book go to community supported shelters. They make temporary housing for the homeless. Winter's coming, and there are hundreds of people on the streets with no place to sleep. And some of you will remember that it wasn't but a month and a half ago that a 57-year-old woman was run over by a dump truck in an alley behind the church. So, whatever we can do, right? So I'm not going to say too much about the poems that I'm going to that I'm going to read here. I'm just going to kind of jump in. I think I've got 25 minutes or so. First poem was inspired by W.S. Merwin. Maybe some of you are aware of his poem on the subject of poetry. Probably my favorite poem of his, and it's what inspired this poem. So let's give that a try. When the apples were ripening. Father, when the apples were ripening, I waited for you. It was summer, and the undertaker's daughter had just left with the circus. I wanted to ask you on that evening, watching her flagged caravan depart, how what I thought was love could die. Father, I remember when you were a tree, all your years bearing fruit, standing with you on the banks of the Mad River. We were fishermen then. I remember you taught me there is a depth to things like rivers, like trees. You said, but love is the most mysterious of all deep things. You said, son, fish there, along the faster currents. Learn to read how the water moves. Become a fish in your heart. And when you become hungry, let someone catch you. Because that's how love works. And when you are caught by love, tend to the years you are given like trees until you are an orchard. Don't ask for anything from the undertaker's daughter. She's been where she's going. Go where you have not been, my son. Mystery will find you there. It is she who will love you deeply. And that is sweet, sweet fruit indeed. So I'm just going to hit a couple, not say too much about them. Border of the new wilderness. We will meet in the meadow, arrive as your shadow. Let your face be a mask. We will meet after midnight with forged sets of papers, our titles and degrees. We will suffer common madness with the enemy we've created, hidden deep within us. We will crawl through gaps in memory, barbed fences of our dignity, tearing the skin of our entitlements. We will battle silent demons with compassion as our weapon, forgive them into an amnesty of faith. We will fight our misconceptions on the plains of meditation in a quiet revolution. We will bind our wounds each morning and face the days before us to create a temporary peace. We will guard the mindful border so no fear can return us as slaves to fields and factories with shadows as our masters. In the great room. The world is hard enough, my friends. Steel barred and iron crossed. Beneath our solitary cells weave tunnels. Just beyond the border wall, a desert storm as vast as time. Throw caution to the wind. Ride a camel on a silver thread. Hold the needle very still. Through it into Eden. Pass a rage of wolves. White doves on an olive branch. Sealed caves in a mountain cliff. Below, the city, horizon to horizon, sounds of golden horns, street corner oracles. Go down at midnight, nymphs and orphans bathing in fountains. Call softly the muse's name, sit elixired on Cabalin streets. By dawn, slip into the great room. Look up at its painted sky, garden beneath heaven. Climb by ladder or rise by wing, and with an artist's brush, lift by imperceptual measure the lazy finger on the outstretched hand above. A couple of political poems. If now isn't the time for a rant, when is? When they send the trucks. We will escape by the back door of night. We will take old forest roads, the ones the loggers drove when trees were green before the endless fires of these smoke-filled skies. We will escape by the back door of night when we're alerted they've reached the bridge where our children on rope swings swung before the water was diverted to cool the great machine. We will escape by the back door of night. We will watch dust rise on switchbacks as trucks ascend, and we hold each other as we did when we were free before the coup. We will escape by the back door of night, having watched our last sunrise, having spoken our love for each other, having read our final poems the way we did before they were crimes. We will escape by the back door of night, when the first gunshots of resistance are heard, but before the missiles hit the meadows, when we climb to the ridgelines, waving our flags, and flee into ice caves and yesterday's better dreams. Leaving Latin America. On a Salvadorian beach, a young girl watched a woven bag of memories be swallowed by the tide. The wind erased the hollow steps in the sand. Out on a high desert, a car burned in the night. Hard rain fell, drowning footprints. At dawn, a wet progression slipped down narrow streets into a dangerous city. They carried grandmother's green bean pupusas and her tearful blessings. They slept beneath volcanoes in the church plaza and waited for the sun. The days were long. Seen from afar, a thin line walked north in a wavering heat. Days became weeks, and the weeks wore on them. For 2,000 miles, candles burned on temporary altars, prayers to an exodus of spirit. There were flags at every border, soldiers at every crossing. There were good reasons to move on. When the fathers walked, they walked with children in their arms. When the mothers rested, they rested with children on their knees. They crossed themselves at the desperate river when the babies cried. Further north, under stars and stripes, American border guards behind razor wire fences drove tent stakes into the heart of the land. We must work to not become disillusioned by the things happening in the world. The way it affects us can be subtle. We see things changing more often not for the better. We need to find positive ways to respond to these changes. We need to find meaningful ways to act in our immediate surroundings. Or in lieu of this, dive into our disillusionment and try to create a shift inside of ourselves toward hope. These next few poems are my attempts to do that. If it doesn't change, short one. If it doesn't change, we'll live by bombs and Bible psalms, do yoga until noon, spend evening hours at baby showers on the dark side of the moon. Again, dealing with disillusionment, called Waiting for the Wine. When the world ends by climate change or cataclysm, on that morning I'll wake up to find we're out of coffee. After our weekend at the cabin at the coast, I'll be late for work, and you'll be leaving for Spain with the book you're writing. You will still have to pack, and we might not be talking. When the world ends by carcinoma or fall, driving to the airport, the traffic will be terrible. In Barcelona, you'll discover you didn't pack your pills or remember to call your brother. I'll keep the dentist waiting. While you're away, the cat will stop using the litter box, and things will really go downhill. When the world ends by flood or famine, refrigerated food will pass its sell-by date. Shopping malls may not open by 10, and cell phone coverage might be spotty. We will have renewed our wine memberships, but club boxes will sit in warehouses or in trucks stuck in traffic. Our unread books will accrue late fees, and it will be several weeks since we made love. When the world ends by stroke or heart attack, it will be 4 years since the kids moved away, and 2 since the last time we visited. But the cars will be paid for, and the house with a new roof will have our street number painted on the curb in our alma mater colors. Sitting alone, I'll binge watch a Netflix second season, and we'll have changed the batteries in the remote. In your room, overlooking the ocean, the television won't be working, and you might think of me. When the world ends by nuclear war or pandemic disease, if it's fall, leaves in the yard may be raked into piles and sit there for weeks. I'll watch football in front of the big screen and be asleep by halftime. You will still not have called, and I will not have cleaned the carpets. But anticipating your return, the bed will have fresh sheets and the wine will be chilled. When the world ends by old age as it must, symphony tickets will wait in will call, and the airline may have lost your luggage. There will be things we need to say, and our dinner reservations may change. When the world ends and we're out of time, high tide will touch the beach again at the cabin on the coast. Your book will not be finished, but Paris will look as good as Venice or Rome for the trip we'll plan next year. Driving to the airport on that morning, the traffic will be lighter, and everything we love will be waiting for us when we return. Okay, so last rites for an old religion, just a bit of a shift. With the land in drought, blackbirds bide their time. In a cornfield, 100 monkeys seated in a circle convene as scribes. Philosophers stuffed with straw hang on posts, scarecrows miming the wisdom of the ages. The birds in feathered vestments woven by old gods inspire the monkeys to write. In the beginning, there was the Word, and with the Word, the end. The earth rumbles across the landscape, and though there is no wind, acres of dry stalks shake and gather. Birds speak, and monkeys write what this way comes. Under a bitter moon, blackbirds pray a litany of dark indulgences. Out of thorny hedgerows, timid rabbits chorus the maledictions. The composition continues. It was neither the best nor the worst of times, but would be soon. Under frayed tassels, black rats gnaw corn cobs at the knees of scarecrows. The sound alone inspires. A pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, all fall down. Monkeys, rabbits, and rats bow their heads. Birds cross themselves with a final Amen. And so it was written, and so it will be. Okay, 3 more and we're out of here. Ashes of the Father. In the blue hour morning, dark as dogs and wolves, there's neither silence nor poems. Out in the streets, madmen rumble like trains. I hear them. How they echo down alleys in their fires and furies, shouting to God. On careless nights, I would join them, setting myself aflame one last time. All my sleeping children would hear my prayer in a manic language and be restless in their dreams. They would hear my towered wind tearing at power lines, yet leaving cats on porches quiet and content. Out of the pockets of my love for them, I'd place trinkets from their childhoods, cryptic keys and devotions on their doorsteps. I would paint in neon on their streets. Unlock your box of memories. Ignite and run like trains. Scatter your father's ashes. Join him where poems are made. If you see my brother, I would ask you if you've seen my brother. I've been looking for him along all these roads. I was told he'd been seen out in the margins. I was told he was just passing through. Our family has not seen him. We've had no word from him in years. My parents died not knowing, and in their final days forgot his name. I still remember we looked alike, his features older though. I still remember we looked alike, though the photos are long gone. My sisters were too young then. For them, he's like a dream, yet they are looking for him also, each in her own way. In his youth, I was told he took odd jobs, got by on words and deeds. He slept where sunsets found him, along a river of dusty places. He might have joined a union once, mining coal or in the merchant marine, or packing alongside migrants, picking in the San Joaquin. Someone said they saw him in Alberta during Vietnam. He might have had a family once. He might have been fishing salmon in the 70s out of Aberdeen. He's been gone so long now, but I still have hope. He'll show up or our paths will cross. I keep my eyes peeled. Maybe you will too. I'd like to look in his eyes before the chance is lost. In the 80s, some say he drove freight down the 5 into Mexico. Some say he was doing 10 for running weed. I just don't know. He took risks, but he didn't gamble much. I heard that in a truck stop outside of Vegas once. I've checked records, I've checked the forwarding address. I've seen rental checks stamped insufficient funds. On a job site near Barstow, a foreman had the tool belt and worn out boots my brother loaned to a new hire framer who worked a week and he had to fire. My last near miss was back in '99. A cop in Needles said he was busted up in an accident on the interstate. Maybe he was using another name in a car with Montana plates. He must have been 50 when he broke both legs. The hospital never did get paid. In a strip club in Baton Rouge, a dancer said she'd lived with him for a year or more, but they broke up after Katrina hit. Where he went from there, no one knows for sure. I keep hearing news from places east and west. He walks with a limp these days. He's getting by. They look at me and say, the likeness is striking. Who knows what's true after all these years? I just know I missed him growing up. I'm still looking for the brother I didn't have, out on the margins along all these roads. If you see him, tell him it's not too late to come home. Okay, so we're gonna run into the open mic right after this, and I got one more poem, and I think the list that we have, there's plenty of time for you to do. You want to be on the list?
At the end, yeah.
Okay,
like
now
usual.
the list is, now you've got less time. 5 minutes we ought to be good. 5 minutes we ought to be good. If you can hold to that, we'll get you all out of here on time. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming tonight. Look forward to hearing what you have to read, and I hope this will introduce our first open mic of the season, and may we have many more. A place for a poem to live. When you create a place for a poem to live, lower the ceiling and dim the lights. Round the corners with opaque shadows. where spectral visitations may take form. When you create a place for a poem to live, beg a seat for strangers, welcome them in. Hold a space in the hollow of your chest for the friend who will not come again. When you create a place for a poem to live, misalign the chairs, scatter cushions, open a space at the bar, infuse the wine with laughter, and toast the poet's tears. Mingle people close, shoulder and thigh, let their cares and differences fall away. Let the air be moved by unseen forces, emanations demanding voice. Let time bend before the gravity of a podium, its small light brave against the darkness, a familiar fire, ancient and communal, bright in the silence before the world. Let it usher an arrival from a distance, spoken to life in the parsing of a line, in the turning of a page, cryptic or lyric, oracle or nature born. When you create a place for a poem to live, let inspiration summon apparitions, incarnations like Cheshire cats. No one knows on nights like this on whose shoulders they might appear. Thank you.